On October 22, 2014, in Philadelphia, a diverse audience came together to watch POPPYN's episode on youth homelessness. After the screening, youth advocates and researchers shared their experiences and insight with the audience.
Let's clap it up for POPPYN, these young people. They're doing some amazing work. So without further ado, back to my young people, and I'm not gonna, no pressure, whoever wants to speak first. I know Dom keeps giving me the eyes. So yeah, just gut reactions to what you saw. Was it honest? Was it truthful?
Yeah, I felt like the video, it focused on a lot of key points, and I felt as though I liked the part where they couldn't really fit all of the organizations into the video, so they mentioned them at the end just in case somebody needed to jot the number down or anything. So maybe after we're done talking, y'all could probably flash it again just in case anybody need, just in case confidential, going through something, y'all need to take the number down, you can take it down. I felt like it really pinpointed everything, and I learned a lot. I learned about the team thing, and I may send my little sister here just from looking at that. I felt like it pinpointed a lot of important points. So yeah.
Cool. Anybody else wanna?
Yeah.
Yes.
My quick reaction to it was it's about time, something good to see, something that's much needed. I'm grateful for POPPYN TV. I'm glad they came out to Journey2Home. I think this is something that should be showed throughout the city. Maybe we could start with the school district, show it to the schools. And I'm glad that it was 30 minutes. I think that's a great time. That's a good enough time for it. And I think it was well put together, especially with the youth. I liked how they had the different scene, the special effects and everything. It really felt like a real show, which it is, but I really like the special effects. I like the different interviewers. It felt like they had a lot of personality, the host and all of that. So my reaction to it is, great job, and it's about time. And I'm glad to be here.
The video was really enlightening in a way. It really, such as the Journey2Home program. Thank you. The Journey2Home program. It was really great to see that people can communicate their language and their story and their life through art. Because such as painting and poetry and writing. Because sometimes a good majority of times we're not able to do we're not able to do the things we love, and unfortunately, in some cases. And to know that there's a program such as that is just inspiring, and because you have people who just love art, all different variations of it. So to know that there's a program like that is just dynamic and spectacular.
To the youth again on the panel, were there any issues not talked about, or things not covered that you wish were included in the film?
I think we should go, towards Jersey area, because there's not a lot of support, not a lot of help. There's organizations, but not really all that. But just spread awareness throughout throughout the country. You know what I mean? Because there is a lot of people that do need support and do need help. You know what I mean? Because I think we should start passing out flyers or something, because of a lot of people do not have TV, do not have this, do not have that. So I think we should start doing it even more bigger.
We need more jobs. It's a lot of young folks that's willing and ready to work. They put in situations that they have no control over. Some things that wasn't talked about is families, how they got put in those situations. I think some people did, but not as much, or have older adults on there, people with kids. and like kind of talk about their reactions to it. Like I like the street interviews. That was really cool. But that's what I would just add, like more like adults that have kids, like their take on it, or if they would have the courage to talk about like their child facing homelessness, and like if they ever been through it themselves, and just like you know, how do they cope with it? How do they keep pushing every day? Like what's some of their motivation and dedication, and why? You know, just saying like never give up.
To my colleagues and advocates on the panel, people who I've actually worked with all personally, which is an honor. You guys are doing some of the best work I know. And having worked with you all in various ways, I understand, and anyone out there that works with young people in the city should understand that funding and resources are a huge issue to the ways that we can be effective with the young people that we care about. So to you guys, the question is, what resources or support does your organization or program need to improve its quality of service and its impact?
One of the major problems we have is staffing, funding for staffing, etc. There's a lot of money that does go out to facilities that help, you know, with after-school programming or helping people who are homeless, people who are experiencing homelessness. But the breakdown of that, of where it comes, like from my department, you know, it becomes slim pickings then. So, you know, you have sometimes one person on staff, and you may enlist volunteers or interns from a college or a school that may come in to help. While at school, they don't necessarily have a complete vested interest in the child or whoever that we're servicing. So, you know, they may have only certain hours in a week that they need to be there, and there's no consistency sometimes. So funding is definitely a big problem in order to have staffing for resources, whether it be trips or, you know, any activity we want to do, creating programming, bringing people in to do things with the kids. You know, that becomes problematic if you don't have the money to pay people to do programs with the kids. Then you kind of have to make stuff up and, you know, do things on the fly. Find out people who are willing to do it for free, or test out a pilot thing they would want to do. So, I mean, those are some of the things that we encounter. They're probably the things that, at the moment, those are the two pressing things that come to mind.
I think healthcare, showers, amenities. I think that's an important thing that we need to survive, really. So.
I hate to mirror what Holden said, but it's the funding for, like he said, staffing, because we had two wonderful young people working with us as our teen outreach support staff who are currently not with us right now because we're trying to get some funding back so that we can get them back. And we're really praying for something to come through. But you need that extra support, those extra hands, so that a lot of the work can be distributed throughout. It's hard for one person to go here, there, around the square by themselves, whereas you had a lot of people, a lot of hands on deck. You can hit several different areas all at once. So the funding for staffing and also general funding, like Holden mentioned, it's hard to run a program with pennies. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of things, a lot of great ideas that we have, but you need money to execute them in a way that you would deem proper. So I would say that that's a huge issue with funding.
My name is Ernell Martinez, and let me just take a second to thank the young people, Josh and this one, doing a great job tonight hosting this event, and also, of course, Mike and Noel for helping facilitate this whole conversation. It's a much needed dialogue that needs to take place. As an artist, one of your goals is to make art that communicates an idea, right? And for me, I've actually worked with Mural Arts for about 10 years now. And Journey2Home is a year-long project that really was intended to draw attention to the issue of teen homelessness or housing insecurity in Philadelphia. And what we've done is try to make artwork as a means of communication with the larger public, with the community, and also policymakers. Next month, we're traveling to Harrisburg with the traveling exhibition to sort of share the stories of young people that's suffered dealing with housing insecurity. And that sort of lean and put a little pressure on politicians and policymakers to sort of change how they go about funding some of the social services here in Philadelphia in particular to help benefit the young people.
Cool. Any questions from the audience? Yes, my man in the blue.
I was wondering, do any young programs provide drug and alcohol counseling? Because the thing, like, this percentage of people, like, they don't have the income coming in, they don't have love, like, they don't feel like they have love coming in, and like, I feel like to the wrong person, they can take advantage of it. So, like, do you guys take any steps into preventing that corner culture from happening?
I work with Mural Arts, and what we've done over the last several years now is try to provide jobs for young people as an alternative to having to go back to the streets for hardship. Like a lot of the young guys I've dealt with sort of always have to battle that reality, that they're sort of being drawn to more negative stuff, and we've provided a different outlet, a means of making money, a means of sort of having their own independence by earning an income, and renting out their own apartments and finding some housing their own way. We pass the mic
We actually we have case managers on staff who, in their caseload, whoever their clients are, the residents who live there, if there is a history of DNA, drug and alcohol, then they'll refer them to or assist them in getting treatment. So they'll help them locate a treatment facility and assist them in enlisting in that treatment facility and make sure that they regularly participate in it. We can't make them do it, but we nudge them to do that and offer them those services. We don't do it on site. We always outsource that to another organization whose specialty is to deal with people who have a drug and alcohol history or currently on it.
So our program doesn't directly itself address those issues, but one of the things that our program does is that we have weekly workshops with our students who are part of our teen program, and they can be on a host of subjects, scholarships and financial aid, I mentioned those things, but also drug and alcohol prevention. We do a workshop on that. So we can address those issues, but also through ECYH, we have a host of connections, a huge network. So we can always connect students, and not only students, families, whoever comes into our office needs additional supports to different agencies and providers and different services through our network.
And I'll speak real quick on behalf of the Achieving Independence Center. My new place of employment is Sullivan. I passed my 90-day probationary period. A big part of my heart and my soul and my life, it's probably still a red shield. The thing about AIC is that we are well equipped with a ton of resources for youth who have been in any kind of out-of-home placement through DHS, and so we do have on-site services that help with DNA issues. We call it ATOD, alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. But one of the ideas I think Ornell put out is positive prevention, right? Because it's just not enough to tell someone like, oh, don't do drugs anymore, right? Drugs are a coping mechanism, right? And so if you're going to rob someone of the way that they've learned to cope, to deal with the traumas in their life, what are we going to put in its place to make sure that we're not, accosting, right? We're not offending this individual in a way that makes them fearful, that makes them scared for change. And that's a big part of the journey I think all of us take with our young people is looking at DNA or even sexual activity as a coping mechanism as opposed to some big issue that makes you bad, right? It's the stigma that gets put out there. So I just want to throw that in the mix. I'm going to hush because I'm just moderating though. I'm not supposed to be commenting. Pat, my buddy Pat, Power Core, I saw your hand previously.
My question to everybody up there is what's your I've been doing this for 13 years working with you. What's your motivation and how do you deal with not necessarily a failure, but the kids who don't exactly make it? You do everything you can. You got those one or two that just no matter what you move heaven for them, but they still kind of don't get it. How do you guys cope with that? How you deal with that?
Good question.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Carter. I'm a teen outreach supporter for the education of children with youth experiencing homelessness. And my motivation for what I do, just motivating the teens that's in those transitional living situations, just basically give them all the resources and have them able to be able to choose from lack of just in that position where they were going through a feeling where they don't have any choice but to go the negative route or what may have you. But just my goal is, and what I use as a coping mechanism, just to give them options and just try to advise them the best way I can, considering their circumstances, to go the best route. And it's always up to them. At the end of the day, it's always up to them to decide on what's the best route for them.
That's a deep question. I think my motivation, well, I started in this position in January 13th. And before that, I wasn't new to the situation. I was actually a chaperone on several occasions with the program when we took the students to college tours. And actually with my colleague, Delphine Coleman, who's sitting right here. But I think for me, for those students who you said you move heaven and earth and everything you do, and it seems like they're not getting through. One coping mechanism for that, for me, is something is always getting through. They may not realize it, they may not be acting on it, but your words don't fall on completely deaf ears. And my other main coping mechanism, I'm a Christian children, so I pray. I pray for these babies every day. I pray for youth every day, because it's not, when I grew up, and I'm not that far removed from many of you, I'm 32, so it's just a little bit of gap, but when I grew up, you know, there was a support system. I didn't have those types of issues of, you know, both parents in my home, loving family. This was just this is such a learning experience, not only, you know, for the youth, but for me. And so I gleaned from them as well, from the experiences that I've been learning about. And there's just so much beauty in these young people, so much intelligence, so much creativity. I'm an artist at heart as well, Mike knows that. But so because of these things, it's just my job to pull that out of them, to let them know that they have support in me. If no one else, I'll be there for you. Give me a call, come by my office, I'll be there for you. I'll push you along. So for me, it's never hopeless. It may look like it on the surface, but there's always a seed that's planted and growing.
Yeah, I mean, my motivation is, you know, I grew up in San Francisco, California. This is really great because it points to this. I grew up in San Francisco, California, and while I was poor, it looked very different living out there than when my family moved here to Philadelphia. Drastically different. Out there, I was poor. I didn't know I was poor, because just the different resources there that were available to us and how things are. And when we came here, it was a drastic difference. And going to school with so many people, you know, who were my friends, and like their reality was, yo, we don't even have peanut butter jelly in the cupboards. And I'm like, that's bug. Like, how are you a kid and you don't have access to food readily? How is it that you're a kid and, you know, you're wearing the same clothes that you wore last year? You know what I mean, 5th grade, you went to 6th grade, you're wearing the same clothes. You know what I mean? And it was just really crazy, you know, that culture shock. And just coming up through the school system here and creating so many friends, and like that's the reality. And that became my reality too. Like, yo, I'm rocking these same Converses from like last year. You know, I mean, these Route 66 jeans from Kmart. So, you know, it was really bug, like the fact that, you know, kids don't have the opportunity to really be kids because you have to fight through so much. You have to fight through domestic violence in the house. You have to fight through sexual abuse. You have to fight through, you know, people on, you know, your family members on drugs or whatever. There's just so much to fight through. And then you're expected to sit in class for 6 hours a day and participate and pay attention. And that's not real. When you worried about when you get out of here, yo, what we doing? I need to take my mind off something. You know what I mean? My friends were smoking cigarettes and P13. You know what I mean? And smoking weed. I'm like, oh, Lord, guys. But you know what I mean, just because that was not something that I was doing that I felt as a coping mechanism for me, you know what I mean, I learned like, yo, they really need this right now, so I can't, it's not my place to judge them. So my motivation comes from my experience, you know, coming here and befriending a lot of people who like, yo, their situation was, you know, a little crazier than mine. And I just don't think it's fair that we, you know, bring kids into this world. And, you know, sometimes, you know, it's not always planned. It's not people's plan, like, yo, I'm going to have a kid just so I can do drugs and mess up their life. But, you know what I mean? Kids come into this world and it's like, they don't even get a chance. So, you know, having access to programs and to stable adults who can really instill something into them, you know, give them a glimmer of hope, like, yo, you are worth something, you have a purpose, you know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff in you that can be brought out of you. Don't worry about everything that's going on right now. Just stay focused on what it is you want to do and find out how you can get there, and I'm gonna help you along. So for me, that's my motivation. And for the, you know, people who don't seem like they'll be able to be reached, something I have to learn to do is, you know, kind of take my hands off them. I'm not their parent. You know, I have to remind myself readily, because that drive to wanna, you gotta get what I'm saying to you when I'm giving it to you, that's not real. I was a teenager not long ago. I just turned 27 on Monday, and I was a teenager not long ago, and it's like, what my mom did, she told me what she had to say, and even though I was rolling my eyes at her, like, yeah, whatever, the stuff she said stuck with me, because when she left, she finished lecturing me, I was mad because I was thinking about everything she said. So it may not apply in that moment, but they'll think about it, then take it with them, and I just remind myself, I'm a guy, I'm not a parent. So.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
I started at the Red Shield about 20 years ago, and it really was the kids that I fell in love with and wanted to be there full time. I started off part-time with a little evening job that was about 12 hours a week, and made a complete change in my career path when I started to work at the Red Shield. I think what's become most important to me and to the work there is to understand the nature of trauma and to understand everything that's happened to every person that comes through that door. And asking that question, what happened to you? And I think that almost sums it all up right there, is kind of what has happened. Because when you look at all the experiences that people have had, and Mike talked a little bit about coping mechanisms and some choices that people make based upon what's happened to them, you can really understand what's been going on with people and help them to kind of find their path towards self-sufficiency.
A quick blip about trauma-informed care, as Susan pointed out, it's the changing of the paradigm from what's wrong with you to what's happened to you, right? Yep. Put it out there.
I have been a social worker for over 30 years now, and I've been working with children and families for all of these years. It is a passion of mine, helping families. For the past 15 years, I actually have been working with children and families specifically that have been experiencing homelessness. And the work that I do is leading a community health outreach program called the Homeless Health Initiative. What we do is I work with healthcare professionals at the hospital, doctors, nurses, etc., dentists. We go out to shelters and we partner with them, and we take and provide free healthcare services to individuals that are experiencing homelessness. What we believe and what I believe is that children are not, I think Kelly said it best when she said, the experience of homelessness is not their identity. It is something that they are experiencing. It is a transitional period of time in their life. While they are in this transitional period, they deserve everything that everybody else deserves, one of which is health care. And so we should not allow their health care to go unmanaged, undetected, and not cared about during this really important period of time, specifically because they stay in shelters for such a long period of time. So my feeling and my belief is, again, every individual that we touch is not just the sum of where they are right now at this point in their life, but we have to think about the environment and how the environment has impacted them. We have to look at their health, both in terms of their physical health, as well as their emotional health, their mental health, their whole psychological well-being. And it's really in that vein that I seek to find resources to help children and families during this really, really important time.
First, thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here, and I thought the film was outstanding, and I learned a lot, and in many ways it broke my heart, which perhaps we'll talk about when we have a little more time to talk, but I can trump you more than 40 years, well more than that, and 70th birthday. But anyway. I was at Einstein for 22 years, and I'm going on my 12th year at POPPYN Shop, so I may have taken care of some of you or your children. And so my passion is poverty. And having worked in North Philly and West Philly, I've been immersed in the problems that young mothers and fathers and babies face. And my attraction, I think, to neonatology, which for those of you who are not aware, is the care of sick and at-risk babies, many of whom are preterm, is that the baby comes into the world and the world is before them. I mean, they have the history of what happened in the uterus, but beyond that, they have every opportunity in their lives, and for their health, which you alluded to, and we'd like to make that opportunity just as the potential just as great for the social and educational opportunities and psychological opportunities, and that's what we're talking about today that has been so desperately sort of splintered in the lives of so many of our children. And again, my passion for that is that every child should have equal opportunity for not just health, but education and psychosocial needs. And I see that so devastated so many times with our young moms who come in, and we were talking just briefly earlier, you know, how some of them are in shelters, and I'm sure you're aware of that. And so my heartiest congratulations and support and positive feelings to those of you who are caring for them. And we also have a developmental follow-up clinic where we follow the young families after they're discharged. And we always try to empower the young moms who are going back to school to graduate, that this is the best thing that you can do for your baby. And so both in my work in the intensive care nursery and in the follow-up clinic, I'm faced with these issues, and thank you for everything that you all are doing.
I study resilience in development. I study resilience in children and in families, and I really do look for, you know, what is the thing that separates the folks who do okay from the folks who struggle and have more challenges. Even if they experience a lot of the same situations, same stressors, risks, and adversities, what is it that's different between the folks who show resilience versus the folks who have more challenges? And that's a really complicated endeavor, one that I know about this much about, even though I've been studying it for years and years. And part of the issue is that, you know, no two people have the same response to the same stressor, and it's a factor of all the other things in their life, the good things, the bad things, the internal things, the resources they have, whether they be psychological coping, or even we're learning tons about genes and about physiology, and they can be resources. And certainly, a lot of the action is in the external things. The things like relationships, positive relationships with family members, and with peers, friends, and then with youth, you know, romantic relationships. And what is the nature of the support there and those relationships? And how does that all factor into the equation when it comes to showing resilience and succeeding?
Thank you all so much. Yeah. Question already?
Yeah.
All right, why not? Let's jump in. I have a question for them, let's get you participate.
I'm Chris, I'm a social work student here at Temple. What I'm curious about is when a young person presents themselves, how do you balance the more urgent structural needs of, say, shelter, food, things like that, with a non-judgmental assessment of what they might need as an individual? So you've got the urgency of these things that need to take place to help you live hour to hour, but you've also have these emotional things that need to be dealt with. How do those things work together?
As a social worker, I would say it's starting where the client is. So it really is thinking about how they are presented to you and what's the immediacy of the needs that they describe. Probably what you're seeing before you is somebody who has a lot of needs, but you certainly can't meet them all at the same time. So it really is starting exactly where they are with the things that are the most pressing and building a relationship and a rapport so that you have the opportunity to help along the road with some of the other issues that are there as well.
And so jumping in right there, if I may. Susan, were you going to respond to that? Nope. Okay, thanks. So Karen, I'm going to start with a question for you. Staying in this social work vein, there's a term often used, that I just found out about maybe 2 years ago. It's biopsychosocial, right? And then in conversation with Susan over coffee when we were in New York, she said, oh, but now there's also spiritual. And I said, well, geez, this term just keeps evolving, right? Biopsychosocial spiritual. What does that mean and why does it matter?
It matters because we, as individuals, are such complex individuals. And the truth is, it really addresses both the intrapersonal as well as the extrapersonal. So what we are talking about is, or are, our physical being, and that would include, the health and medical needs that we have. It's going to also include mind-body connections, which could be related to psychological issues, that sometimes, again, develop in relationship to the environment and the social environment and experiences that one is having. When we think about or add on this term spiritual, what we're really talking about is how spiritual, on what level are people, is that something that they use that really helps them in terms of coping? All too often what I do think is we fail to ask that question. We fail to find out more about that particular realm and how that realm might help a person.
Thank you, thank you. Dr. Hurt, if I could follow up with you, because she pointed out, right, that this biopsychosocial spiritual aspect of explaining who we are as people or how we develop and what that means for us. I want to ask you, how can the environment affect a person's ability to achieve?
Well, I think I said just a moment ago that the film in some ways sort of broke my heart because it was talking about homelessness. And all of the research that my group has done has found in very impoverished families, and a lot of our work has been done with mothers who are crack addicted and looking at what went on with their children, in addition to children who grew up with moms and dads who did not have addiction. And it turned out that no matter whether or not the child's mom was an addict or not, the thing that predicted their intelligence and their ability to get along was what happened in the home. And when we went out to the homes and looked at what was going on, there were different, what we call subscales. There were things like, did the mother, and it could also be a foster mother or dad, did they hug the child? Did they praise the child while we were in the home? Was the child's artwork displayed? Had the child been to the zoo or to the Police Touch Museum once in the past year? Were there books in the home? Was the child read to? And one of the subscales was what was the physical environment of the home? And of the 8 subscales, the things that all 7 predicted a better IQ and a better outcome in school. The only one that didn't was the physical environment. So it was what was going on in the home that was so powerful in predicting the outcome of the children who were doing well and who didn't, regardless of whether or not their mom had used drugs. So that's why the film broke my heart, because we're talking about children who may not have experienced that in the type of home that we'd like to think everyone grows up in. But again, for the people who are in the shelters and who are receiving the love and affection and support that you are giving them, that's wonderful, and it's never too late. So that is what I think I would like to tell you about the environment. I'm talking about when the child is younger and in a home with either a biological mom or kinship care or foster. But they're just a little bit older, but they're in your home. So again, thank you.
I think it's key that the drugs they weren't a death sentence. And that's what's put out in common, knowledge, right? That, oh, your mom was on crack, oh, you were born a nigga with crack, oh, it's a rap. And it's just not true. right? So I just wanted to follow that up. Yes, go for it.
One point that is not exactly germane to what you asked me, but we were talking a little bit before. I think the crux of the problem is, why are the children homeless? You know, what is going on in America? I mean, it's not, you know, we can build shelters and shelters, but why do we have to? And I don't know I think we all have ideas, but I will leave that to some of the other panelists.
So on this, thank you, Doctor. On this space of home, Susan, what is a home? You worked in shelter for so long, right, or in emergency housing for so long. So what is a home and why does it matter? Because people come into Red Shield and they're like, oh, this feels like home, which is very different than a lot of other spaces that people visit in emergency housing and they say it doesn't feel like that.
So I have to say, when I think of the word home, the theme song to Cheers comes to mind. And I sort of didn't want to say that because I think we should be talking about a bar when we're talking about homelessness here in this kind of forum at the Temple. But there is that theme song to Cheers, which is, you know, where everybody knows my name. And home really is about my place and where I fit in. It's not necessarily those four walls, foundation, and roof. Because sometimes when we hear about families that are homeless, we just think that they're out of their home. But really they're out of their place. So if you think for a minute what you're going to do when you leave here tonight. Maybe you'll stop at a food truck and grab a little dinner and take that to your home. And maybe you'll kick off your shoes and you'll turn on your own television and you'll go to your fridge and get a beverage and just be able to chill. Because it's your place. But when people lose that, they lose that ability to have that kind of comfort. So in the Red Shield, we really try to put that all back in place by allowing people to have choices. The residents can work with the kitchen, decide what kind of food we're going to serve. We've had residents that have cooked in our kitchen because their grandma has the best macaroni and cheese recipe and they want to share that with everybody. We believe in the power of the community. There's a democratic process there, where policies and rules are reviewed on a regular basis about what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. What makes sense when you're a teenager, instead of having kind of flat rules about everybody has to be in bed by 8 o'clock. Well, maybe teenagers don't have to be in bed by 8 o'clock. Because, man, if I was having to go to bed at 8 o'clock when I was a teenager, it'd be sort of all hell would break loose. So home then becomes kind of, I keep saying this, but it really does reinstill someone's place in the world. Because once you find your place, then you can find your future. You know, you have to mourn some losses and get past a lot of that stuff before you can take steps forward.
I just want to underscore what Susan said in terms of home really is a place. Oftentimes, you know, again, you hear us talking about the term experiencing homelessness versus homeless. Homeless is not an identity, it really is an experience, it's a transitional experience. If you call somebody homeless, they may not even see themselves as homeless simply because they may not have a roof over their head, but they may be in a place or a space where they have people that share love with them and friendship with them, and so they don't see themselves as homeless because they are part of a community, and that community in and of itself can be home to them.
Well said.
Thank you.
No problem. So JJ, take us on home here.
JJ, try.
You know, a clinical psychologist, right, it's a really interesting space and place to work in, right? And there is a huge issue amongst young people and amongst adults, right, with the stigma around mental and behavioral health. Everybody thinks the moment you say, you know, how's your, you know, are you well mentally, you know, or how's the wellness thing? And people are like, oh, I don't need medication, and that's not normally what any of us mean when we make that comment, right? So JJ, I would like you to answer this question. What is behavioral or mental health, and what role does it play in development?
It's a great question. It's a really complicated question. I'll do my best in the couple minutes we have left. And also try to blow your minds if I can. So I think most people would respond to that question with something that's vaguely of the notion that it's an illness, right? So first of all, when people are asking about mental health, they're really asking, are you mentally ill? Right? They're not asking about your health. They're asking, are you ill? There's a lot more room above whether you're ill or not. For example, I'm not sick, right? Physically, I'm not sick. But, you know, I weigh 145 pounds and I get winded walking up the stairs, so I'm not really that healthy either, right? There's a lot of room above, you know, not sick. But thinking about mental illness is a lot of people think about mental illness as there's something wrong with you. There's something inherently wrong with you. And you really can't fix it. I don't think about it that way. And a lot of other people don't either. Another way to think about well-being or mental health and mental illness is whether or not the individual is able to function in their culture and in their context to do what it is that society expects them to do. If you're, if you're 20-something, you should be in school or you should be working. You should have a level of self-control. You should have friends. You should have romantic relationships. And if you're struggling with that, some of the things that could get in the way might be something like what folks think about as diagnoses or something like that. It might be a whole bunch of other things too. So, that said, it's not that there's something inherently wrong with people most of the time. It's that these factors, the factors I talked about sort of when I was doing my little intro, have come together in such a way that the person just isn't prepared for that context. But again, humans are remarkably resilient. It's one of the strongest, most resilient species on this planet. And if you put them in really, really challenging, really stressful circumstances, they will adapt. And they will, in a way, get used to it. And they will work to function in that circumstance. But if that circumstance, there's some circumstances that we don't want people to get used to, that we don't want them to have to adapt to. Circumstances of high stress. We don't want anyone to get used to experiencing domestic violence or living on the street or anything like that, but they will get used to it. But broader society expects them to be able to do other things. And because they've gotten used to these other contexts, they're not able to do those other things, or it's harder to do those other things. And we need to give them the relationships, we need to give them the contexts and the experiences that will allow them to get used to what society wants them to do again.
It's always interesting when kids first come to the Shield. You guys have snacks out all the time, and you can always tell a new kid because when they walk by, they load their pockets because they're so accustomed to living, from moment to moment and not knowing when that next meal is going to come. So for a while, we can say, you can have as much as you want, and you don't have to load up your pockets and stuff. So you might look at that behavior as something else, but it's really they're coping. Share that.
Yes, no problem.
And can I just say, I brought with me a book. It is a new textbook that I hope that you all will have a chance to take a look at. It is entitled Supporting Families Experiencing Homelessness, and that includes, of course, families, children, and youth. And my colleague JJ and I have had the pleasure of co-writing chapters in this book, but it really covers it from soup to nuts. And anybody who's really interested in this topic, I think, should really have this book.
I'm going to look at the nice lady in charge. All right, go on ahead.
Quick question. Me and my sister, both of us, I have 4 children. I'm a single mother. Jocelyn is my daughter. And my sister has 3 children. And at one point, we were all living in the same house. So you could just imagine how congested it was. And the problem between me and my sister came, I was trying to keep us afloat. And she was welcoming in all these other children to eat dinner and sleep over, which is okay to a point until we're going to be homeless. And then she would think I was being mean, but I'm thinking, I got 4 kids plus my nieces and nephews. I really gotta watch what we're doing. And then you did feel bad because I feel like, they're just kids. They didn't ask to be born. Because these children were children, from like 10 and under. But then it felt like we're just enabling the parents not to do their job. And we're struggling harder to do their job. As doctors or social workers or whatever, is that wrong? Is that the wrong path to take, like by putting restrictions on other parents' children?
It is a hard question to ask. And you know what, in the moment, there is the emotional side of you that really wants to help. Like you said, children, right, it's not them. But you know what I would suggest? I mean, as a social worker, that's why there are agencies and resources to support families that are in need. So having conversations with some of these other parents would be appropriate. Because you're right, you can't keep taking from yourself and your own family to give to other people, but you can give in other ways, and that could be information, it could be referrals, it could be really helping other people to get connected to what they need.
And if you look at it from a larger system-wide perspective, you already heard tonight that there are not enough beds for families in the city. So conceivably, you could cram every homeless person into a shelter, but you wouldn't be able to serve everyone. And you wouldn't be able to meet all of their needs to help people moving along. I mean, you could put everybody on a mat somewhere, but it might not help the larger system, and it would tax the system so much. So when you sort of see it from that perspective, it's kind of what was happening in your household.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that definitely was. Thank you.
And I'll just very briefly add too that just to echo some of the points that were made. People need to eat. Food security is a big thing. It's a very important thing. If we can't keep the organism alive, then that's a big problem. If healthcare is very important, but again, relationships, love, support, guidance, that really goes a long way in helping folks adapt to very difficult circumstances and to stay connected to sort of broader we as opposed to just sort of whatever that local we is.
Thank you all so much. Let's clap it up for the show.
First of all, thank you, Michael O'Brien, for doing a great job moderating. So, this is the last time you'll see me and Stormy's beautiful face up here. Today anyway, you'll always see us on YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, feel free to connect with us and hashtag the phrase, I believe it's in youth homelessness, to continue this conversation online on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those wonderful social media websites. So thank you to all our panelists and organizations that came out tonight.
And if you have any more questions, please talk to anybody wearing a POPPYN shirt. They will answer your questions. And if you have any questions about the organization's mission tonight, visit the resource table that is out front.
So, for our last time, thank you all for coming.